A pleasure to meet all at last, and welcome back once again to some more of HJN Super Graphics. And so, having talked quite a bit about certain things here and there, I get the feeling that some are going to want me to talk a bit more about Blast from the Past. Well, one good way to take a look at it is to go to 2022. A year that's definitely improved over the last one in a number of different ways. But of course, one other big way that it helped us in life was to celebrate the Atari 50th anniversary. Well, that's the subject for today's video. 2591 in HJN is going to be all about the 50th anniversary collection. Atari and all the mainstream games that were in fact a product of one of the biggest pioneers of all time. Atari, while not necessarily man for the first ever video games, was still one of the main reasons why arcades grew, why video games grew as a business, as an industry, and as a piece of culture. In fact, it basically coincided with the likes of comic books, TV, movies, and etc., even novels. But video games were more than just some piece of technology that came around by this point in time in the year 1972. As it was co-founded in Sunnyvale, California by Ted Dabney and Nolan Bushnell. The very same Nolan Bushnell whom also would eventually be responsible for founding other companies, including the famous entertainment venue Chuck E. Cheese. But before that happened, he pretty much allowed for a lot of things to take place with Atari. In 1972, a weird giant square-shaped piece of wood did in fact allow for one of the first ever arcade games known as Pong. And while Pong wasn't exactly the first ever video game, as that kind of history can sort of take us back to the days of either Space War or even that radar modification known as Tennis for Two. Quite an old way to go if you ask me. Way before the days of video games as we knew about it in Atari's era. But let's not forget, the Atari 50th Anniversary Collection not only gave us the big history of how Nolan Bushnell and Ted Dabney started one of the biggest video game industries of all time, but also allowed for arcades to flourish. A variety of different hits came around, not just with Pong, but with others. You had Missile Command, you had Firefighter, you had a variety of different things. Of course, we can't forget to mention that it wasn't just about the old games that came along in the 70s, but eventually, when it came around too, by the time the 2600 became discontinued, there was also the 5200 and 7800 libraries, which were not at all well represented at the time, because both consoles didn't quite do so well, although at least the 7800 managed to last a good amount of time, far better than the 5200. It was a pretty bad flop, especially when it came around to the video game crash of 1983. After all, Atari itself found itself in a hail of fire alongside a good majority of the rest of the video game industry. Mattel Electronics, Coleco, even Nintendo didn't exactly do too well. But hey, by 1985, 1989, NES, Master System, and eventually the Genesis, followed by the Super Nintendo, and other consoles that would take place in future generations of console gaming would prove the industry truly wasn't dead after all. But of course, with the 5200 and 7800 pretty much going out, and eventually Atari getting itself back on its feet thanks to the likes of a man known as Jack Tramiel, who bought out Atari by 1984 in order to keep it alive and running. There eventually came portable consoles because, after all, the Game Boy and Game Gear became huge. Atari would come along with their own model known as the Lynx, as well as a smaller model, the Lynx 2. And then came one of their final pushings that they needed. A 64-bit system known as the Jaguar. Yeah, if the Lynx wasn't cool enough, look at the Jaguar. 64 bits. And the console itself, alongside the cartridges and the giant controllers with keypads in the center, truly did make for a unique collectible piece. But with it being rare, and even more so when you talk about CD attachments, oof, I tell you. It was funny enough when AVGN had a whole episode dedicated to it, and even more funnier when you realize how many callbacks he made to that one day in 2009. But you know what? I guess one thing is worth mentioning. Across the huge library of games that came along with the 2600 series, the 5200 series, and the 7800 series, then the Lynx, then the Jaguar, one thing's for certain. Cybermorph. One of those little polygraph-based graphics type of games, in a similar way to how the SNES had Star Fox, for instance. But Cybermorph unfortunately didn't fare that much better. Although, one thing's for sure. There's that age-old question that probably never truly gets answered, even to this day. Where did you learn to fly? And let me tell you, if there's one thing that I might as well point out here, it's the fact they thought to put it as a trophy. Yeah, quite literally. Probably because it turned into such a big meme overnight when AVGN reviewed the console and the games involved. Oh, but you know what though? It's even more crazy. The fact that they included the game to begin with. They could have included some other crap along there. Like where's Checkered Flag? Where's Attack of the Mutant Penguins? Where's Zool 2? Where's Bubsy? Or where's even the original Rayman, which eventually would find its way to the PlayStation 1 by the time of its release in '95. I guess we'll never truly know how all of that just didn't bother to be included. But hey, you know what? The game library that came with this one piece truly was quite an adventure for me. So much so that I've included this entire compilation of games in GWK Back to the Past, which, if you haven't seen it already, please do. There's even a post that I put up not too long ago in which that I basically made a good reference to Atari's famous jingle, "Have you played Atari today?" And I'll tell you what, I not only played Atari today, I learned the history of it. I got to know about Mr. Bushnell as well as Mr. Trammell, the guys who originally had Atari in their hands, alongside many other people working for the company, and all the crap that it's been through. All the consoles they made, all the games they made, and all of the bits they managed to accumulate within a span of 25 years. Up until the point where Atari just stopped making consoles. It's kind of saddening when you think about it. Imagine today, because of how well known they are and how represented they are. I mean, they've made such great games over the years. Like Roller Coaster Tycoon, that was probably one of my favorite PC games of all time. So much so that it turned into a trilogy. I loved those games so much. Unfortunately, they didn't do all too well with their most recent outing. Though at least, it stayed true to its words. Roller Coaster Tycoon Adventures Deluxe did what it did, being an adventure, through the many amusement parks that you create and all the rides that you customize. But some things weren't ultimately intuitive. So, not exactly something I would say it's worth playing, let alone the way I've done so. Anyways though, I feel like that about covers it for the Atari 50th Anniversary Collection. And tomorrow I'm going to have some more things to say regarding video games, including, how about Nickelodeon-based properties. That's probably going to be a good segue for what's to come tomorrow. So, I'll see you guys then, and make sure to like, subscribe, comment, follow me wherever you can find me, and stay on the Hollywood side for more.